The stagecoach rattled to a stop in front of the weathered hotel in Tombstone, Arizona territory, and Clara Bennett stepped down into the dust with nothing but a carpetbag, a broken engagement, and a determination to never let another man make decisions for her life again. It was April of 1882, and the silver mines were booming, drawing fortune seekers and dreamers from every corner of the country. Clara had come west not for silver, but for something far more precious: freedom. Back in Philadelphia, her former fiancé had sold her late father's printing business without her consent, pocketing the money and expecting her gratitude for handling man's work. She had walked away from him and everything familiar, using the small inheritance her grandmother had left her to buy a one-way ticket as far from Pennsylvania as the rails would take her. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly as she surveyed Allen Street. Tombstone was bigger than she had imagined, more alive. Cowboys mingled with miners, merchants hawked their wares, and the sound of a piano drifted from one of the many saloons. The air smelled of dust, horses, and possibility. "You need help with your bags, miss?" A young boy no more than 12 appeared at her elbow. "Just this one, thank you." She handed him a coin. "Can you direct me to the newspaper office?" He pointed down the street. "The Epitaph? That way, 3 buildings past the Crystal Palace Saloon. You cannot miss it." Clara thanked him and made her way through the crowded street, her practical gray traveling dress collecting dust with every step. She had written ahead to inquire about work, having spent years helping her father typeset and edit copy. John Clum, the editor, had written back with cautious interest but no promises. The newspaper office was cramped and smelled of ink and paper, a scent that felt like home. A man in his 30s with intelligent eyes looked up from his desk. "Mr. Clum, I am Clara Bennett. I wrote to you about employment." Recognition crossed his face. "Miss Bennett, I did not expect you to actually come." He stood, wiping ink from his fingers. "I have to be honest with you. Tombstone is not an easy place for a woman alone, and I can only offer part-time work. The pay is modest." "I can typeset faster than most men, and I have a good eye for copy editing," Clara said firmly. "Give me a trial 1 week. If my work does not meet your standards, I will ask for nothing." Clum studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "You have grit. I will give you that. Be here tomorrow morning at 6. We go to press at noon." Clara left the office with her first victory, small but significant. Now she needed lodging. The hotel rates she had seen posted were far beyond what she could afford long-term. She would need to find a boarding house or rent a room. As she walked back up Allen Street, she noticed a man posting a notice on the board outside the general store. He was tall, lean, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. He wore dusty denims and a shirt that had seen better days, and there was something careful in the way he moved, as if he was aware of every person around him without appearing to watch them. Clara stepped closer to read the notice he had just posted. "Ranch hand needed. Room and board included. Inquire at the Lucky Star Ranch 5 miles north of town." "Excuse me," she said, "are you the owner of the Lucky Star Ranch?" The man turned, and she found herself looking into dark eyes that held both wariness and something deeper. A kind of bone-deep loneliness she recognized because she had seen it in her own mirror. He was perhaps 30, with the weathered look of someone who had spent years under the desert sun. "I am. Declan Murphy." His voice was low, with a slight Irish lilt softened by years in the West. "But I am looking for a ranch hand, and no offense, miss, but that is hard work." "I am not applying for the position," Clara said quickly, "but I noticed it includes room and board. I have just arrived in town and I need lodging. I have a job at the Epitaph, but hotel rates are too high. Would you consider renting me a room? I can pay, and I can cook and help with household work in exchange for a reduced rate." Declan looked surprised, then thoughtful. "The place is not much," he said slowly. "It is a working ranch, rough around the edges. Most women would not want to live that far from town." "I am not most women," Clara said, "and I prefer peace and quiet to the noise of town." Something flickered in his eyes, almost like amusement. "Let me think on it. The ranch is not exactly fit for company. Can you ride?" "Well enough." Come out tomorrow afternoon. I will show you the place. And you can decide if you still want to live there. He tipped his hat. Declan Murphy, as I said. Clara Bennett. His hand was calloused and warm when she shook it, and she felt an unexpected flutter in her chest that she firmly ignored. She was done with men, done with romance. This was purely a practical arrangement. That night, Clara stayed at the hotel, spending precious dollars she could not afford. She lay awake listening to the sounds of Tombstone at night, music, laughter, the occasional shout or gunshot. This was her new world now, as far from Philadelphia drawing rooms as the moon. Her first day at the Epitaph went smoothly. John Clum seemed pleasantly surprised by her speed and accuracy. The other employee, a young man named Thomas, was initially skeptical, but warmed to her when she caught several errors in his copy. "You really do know your way around a printing press," Clum admitted at noon when they finished the day's edition. "My father owned the Bennett Press for 20 years, Clara said. "I grew up in a newspaper office." "Then why did you come west?" Clara met his eyes steadily. "Because in Philadelphia, no one would hire a woman to do the work I'm qualified for, and because I needed a fresh start." Clum nodded, understanding in his expression. "Tombstone is full of people seeking fresh starts. Welcome aboard, Miss Bennett. The job is yours if you want it." After work, Clara rented a horse from the livery stable. The stableman gave her directions to the Lucky Star Ranch, and she set off north into the desert hills. The landscape was harsh and beautiful, all red rock and scrub brush under an impossibly blue sky. Mountains rose in the distance, purple against the horizon. She found the ranch at the end of a long rutted road. The property consisted of a weathered house, a barn that leaned slightly to one side, and several corrals. Cattle grazed in the distance. Everything looked worn and tired, as if the land itself was holding its breath. Declan emerged from the barn as she rode up. He had been working. His shirt was damp with sweat, and he had a smudge of dirt across his jaw. "You came," he said, and she could not tell if he was pleased or concerned. "I said I would." He helped her dismount with easy courtesy, then gestured toward the house. "Let me show you what you would be getting into." The house was small, a simple structure with a main room, a kitchen, and 2 bedrooms. Everything was clean but spare. There was almost no furniture beyond the essentials and no decorative touches. It felt like a place where someone lived but did not quite believe they deserved a home. "The second bedroom is through there," Declan said, indicating a door off the main room. "It is small, but it has a window and a decent bed. The roof does not leak, at least not much. I would charge you $10 a month. And if you want to cook for both of us and help with basic household work, we can call it $5. Clara walked through the house slowly. It was rough, yes, but there was something about it, something solid beneath the wear. The bones of the structure were good, the proportions pleasing. The main room had a fireplace built from local stone, and the windows, though small, were positioned to catch the morning light. "You are the only one who ever looked at my old place and said it had good bones," Declan said quietly, and she realized she had spoken her thoughts aloud. She turned to find him watching her with an expression she could not quite read. "Because it does," she said firmly. "It just needs some care, some attention." Something in his face shifted, became vulnerable for just a moment before he shuddered it away. Most people see a rundown ranch that is barely keeping afloat. Then most people do not look closely enough. Clara walked to the window and looked out at the land. "I will take the room, Mr. Murphy. When can I move in?" "Tomorrow, if you like." "And it is Declan. We will be living under the same roof, no sense in being formal." "Then you must call me Clara." They stood there in the dusty main room, 2 people who had both been knocked down by life and were trying to stand back up. Clara felt something shift in the air between them, something that was not quite friendship yet but had the potential to become it. "I should warn you," Declan said. "Ranch life is early mornings and hard work. I cannot promise luxury or entertainment." "I am not looking for either," Clara assured him. "Just a quiet place to live while I build my new life." "Then welcome to the Lucky Star Ranch." He held out his hand again, and this time when she shook it, the gesture felt like a pact. Clara moved to the ranch the next day. She had few possessions, which made the transition easy. Declan helped her carry her trunk into the small bedroom, then left her to settle in while he went back to work. The room was indeed small, but it had a sturdy bed, a washstand, and a chest of drawers. The window looked east toward the mountains. Clara unpacked her few dresses, her books, her father's old pocket watch that was all she had left of him. She had brought her grandmother's quilt, and she spread it on the bed, adding a touch of color and comfort to the spare room. That evening she cooked dinner for both of them, using the supplies in the kitchen and adding items she had brought from town. Declan came in at dusk, dusty and tired, and stopped short when he saw the table set with a proper meal. "When did you have time to do this?" he asked. "I am efficient," Clara said simply. "Sit down before it gets cold." They ate in somewhat awkward silence at first. Clara studied him across the table. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the small scar on his left cheek, the way his hands, though scarred and calloused, moved with precision. "How long have you had this ranch?" she asked. 3 years. Bought it with money I saved working cattle drives and mining claims. It is not much, but it is mine." Pride and defensiveness mingled in his voice. "That is no small achievement." He looked at her sharply, as if checking for mockery, then relaxed when he found none. "Most people think I'm crazy, trying to make a go of it out here. The land is hard, water is scarce, and cattle prices are unpredictable. But you are still here? I am stubborn." "So am I," Clara said, and saw a smile tug at the corner of his mouth. "I noticed." Over the next week they fell into a rhythm. Clara worked at the epitaph in the mornings, then rode back to the ranch in the early afternoon. She kept house, cooked meals, and began to make small improvements, washing curtains, organizing the kitchen, planting herbs near the door. Declan worked from dawn until dark, tending cattle, mending fences, fixing the endless things that broke on a working ranch. They were careful with each other, polite but distant. Both had been hurt, and both were wary of letting anyone too close. But slowly, in the quiet evenings after dinner, they began to talk. Clara learned that Declan had come west from New York as a boy, after his parents died in a tenement fire. He had been passed between relatives who did not want him, had run away at 14 and survived by his wits and hard work. He had been a cowboy, a miner, a hired gun for a time. Though he did not elaborate on that and she did not press, he had saved every penny, dreaming of land of his own. Declan learned that Clara had lost her mother young, had been raised by her father in the printing trade, and had fallen in love with a man who turned out to value her inheritance more than her heart. She spoke matter-of-factly about it, but he heard the hurt beneath the words. "He was a fool," Declan said one evening, surprising himself with the vehemence in his voice. Clara looked up from the mending she was doing. "What? Your fiancé, he was a fool to lose you." She smiled, but it was sad. "He did not lose me. He never had me, not really. He wanted a decorative wife and access to my father's business. When I objected to him selling it without consulting me, he told me I should be grateful he was willing to handle such matters so I would not have to trouble my delicate female mind." Declan snorted. "Delicate. Right. You ride 5 miles each way to town and back every day, work a full shift at a newspaper, then come home and run this household without complaint. That is not delicate." "No," Clara agreed, it is not. But it took me too long to realize I did not have to be what he wanted me to be. And now? Now I am figuring out who I want to be." Declan understood that. He was still figuring it out himself. One Saturday, Clara did not work at the newspaper. She spent the morning cleaning and then announced she was going to tackle the main room. "It needs organization," she said, "and some comfort. A house should feel like a home." Declan, who had been planning to ride out to check the herd, found himself staying to help. Clara had a vision, and she directed him to move furniture, carry out broken items, and help her wash windows. By afternoon, the room was transformed. It was still sparse, but it felt lived in, cared for. "You have a gift for this," Declan said, looking around. "I like making things better," Clara said. She was flushed from the work, her hair escaping its pins, and Declan felt something tighten in his chest. He had been trying hard not to notice how pretty she was, how her presence had changed the ranch from a place he worked into a place he wanted to come home to. He had been trying not to notice the intelligence in her eyes, the way she hummed while she cooked, the sound of her laughter when something amused her. But it was getting harder to ignore. They were sitting on the porch steps watching the sunset paint the desert gold and crimson when Clara said, "Thank you for taking a chance on me." "Thank you for taking a chance on this place," Declan replied. "You were right, you know. It does have good bones. I just could not see it anymore. Sometimes we are too close to something to see its value." He wondered if she was still talking about the house. The next few weeks brought a heat wave that made even the desert dwellers wilt. Clara adjusted her schedule, working earlier in the morning and spending the hottest part of the day in the relative cool of the house. Declan worked through the heat because cattle did not care about comfort, but he came back to the house drenched in sweat and exhausted. One evening he came in to find Clara had hauled water for a bath and left it warming on the stove. "You did not have to do that," he said, but gratitude was thick in his voice. "I know, but you looked like you needed it." These small kindnesses undid him more than he wanted to admit. He was falling for her. He tried to tell himself it was just proximity, just gratitude for her help. But he knew it was more. It was the way she looked at his struggling ranch and saw potential. The way she challenged John Clum on editorial decisions and won his respect. The way she sang old Irish ballads while cooking, songs his mother had sung, and when he mentioned it, she smiled and said her grandmother had been from County Cork. It was the way she made him believe he could be more than just a man surviving, that he could have a real life, a real home. But Clara had been clear. She had come west to be independent, to escape the expectations of marriage and domesticity that had trapped her. He would not burden her with his growing feelings. He would take what she was willing to give, her company, her laughter, her presence in his home, and be grateful for it. Then one night in late June, everything changed. Clara had been in town longer than usual, staying to help with a special edition of the paper. Declan had expected her back by early afternoon, but sunset came, and she had not arrived. He told himself not to worry. Perhaps she had stayed to have dinner with friends. Perhaps the work had taken longer than expected. But as darkness fell and she still had not returned, worry turned to fear. He saddled his horse and rode toward town at a gallop. He found her 2 miles from the ranch, standing beside her horse on the darkening road. Even in the twilight, he could see she was shaken. "Clara?" He was off his horse before it fully stopped. "What happened? Are you hurt?" "I am fine," she said, but her voice trembled. "The horse threw a shoe. I've been walking for the past hour." "In the dark? Alone?" Fear made his voice sharp. "Do you have any idea how dangerous that is? There are rattlesnakes, coyotes, and worse, men who would not think twice about taking advantage of a woman alone." "I am aware," Clara said, and now there was steel in her voice. "But I had limited options. I could not leave the horse, and I could not stay on the road all night, so I walked." Declan forced himself to breathe to calm down. "I am sorry. I was worried." Something in her expression softened. "Were you?" "Of course I was. I thought—" He stopped, aware he was about to say too much. "What did you think?" They stood there in the near darkness, the horses stamping beside them, and Declan felt the careful walls he had built crumbling. "I thought something had happened to you," he said quietly, "and I realized that would be unbearable." Clara was very still. "Declan, I know," he said quickly. "I know you came here for independence. I know you do not want complications, but I cannot keep pretending I do not care about you. I cannot keep acting like it does not matter to me whether you come home at night." He took a breath. "You can ignore this. We can go on as we have been. But I needed to say it once. I needed you to know." The silence stretched between them, full of possibility and fear. Then Clara closed the distance between them and kissed him. It was brief, tentative, but when she pulled back, her eyes were bright. "I am terrified," she whispered. "I swore I would not do this again. I swore I would not let myself be vulnerable." "I am terrified too." Declan cupped her face gently. I have nothing to offer you but a struggling ranch and a heart that has been kicked around so much I was not sure it still worked. Then you walked into my life and saw good bones in something everyone else called worthless. You made me remember what hope feels like." "This is a terrible idea," Clara said, but she was smiling through tears. "Probably the worst. We will both likely regret it. Almost certainly." She kissed him again, longer this time, and Declan felt something in his chest unfold like a flower opening to sun. They rode back to the ranch together, Clara on Declan's horse with his arms around her. Neither spoke, but the silence was comfortable now, full of promise. Over the following weeks, their relationship deepened and changed. They were careful, chaperoned by distance and propriety. Clara still kept her own room, and they were conscious of maintaining respectability. But there were stolen moments, hands brushing while washing dishes, kisses on the porch in the evening, long conversations that stretched late into the night. Declan found himself planning a future that included her. He worked even harder on the ranch, wanting to prove it could support a family. Clara wrote to her aunt in Philadelphia, the only family member she was still close to, telling her about the new life she was building and the man she was building it with. But happiness made them both nervous. Both had learned that good things could be snatched away. In early August, trouble arrived in the form of a man named Gerald Thornton, Clara's former fiancé. Clara was in town at the Epitaph when he found her. She looked up from typesetting to find him standing in the doorway, looking out of place in his expensive suit and polished shoes. "Clara," he said, as if he had every right to her name, "I have been looking everywhere for you." She put down the letter block slowly, her heart pounding. "What are you doing here, Gerald?" "I came to bring you home. This foolishness has gone on long enough." John Clum appeared from the back office. Is there a problem, Miss Bennett?" "No problem," Gerald said smoothly. "I am Miss Bennett's fiancé. I have come to escort her back to Philadelphia." "Former fiancé," Clara corrected firmly. "We are no longer engaged, Gerald. I made that clear when I left." "You were upset. I understood that. But running away across the country? Living alone in this barbaric place?" He looked around the newspaper office with obvious disdain. "This is beneath you, Clara. Your father would be ashamed." Clara felt anger rise, hot and sharp. "Do not speak of my father. You sold his legacy without my consent and kept the money. That is what would have shamed him." "I was protecting you from the burden of business decisions," Gerald said, his voice taking on a patronizing tone she now recognized as his true nature. "Women are not equipped for such matters. I was doing what was best." "What was best for you, you mean?" Gerald's expression hardened. "I have spent considerable time and money tracking you down. I am not leaving without you." "Then you will have a long wait," Clara said coldly, "because I am not going anywhere." "We will see about that." Gerald turned and left, and Clara stood trembling with anger and old fear. John Clum put a hand on her shoulder. "Are you all right?" "I will be." But she was not sure she believed it. That evening, when she told Declan what had happened, she saw his jaw tighten. "He cannot make you go back," Declan said. "I know, but Gerald is persistent, and he has money, which means he has power. Not here, not over you." But Clara knew men like Gerald did not give up easily, especially when their pride was wounded. Over the next week, Gerald made his presence known in Tombstone. He took a room at the finest hotel, made donations to local businesses, and began a quiet campaign of slander against Clara. He told anyone who would listen that she was mentally unstable, that she had run away in a fit of female hysteria, that he was trying to help her. Some people believed him. Clara noticed cooler greetings in town, sidelong glances. John Clum remained staunchly in her corner, but even he warned her that reputation mattered in a small community. Declan wanted to confront Gerald directly, but Clara stopped him. "Violence will only prove his point," she said, "that the West is barbaric and I need to be rescued from it. We have to be smarter than that." "Then what do we do?" Clara thought for a moment. We show him that I am not alone, that I have a life here, a real life with people who care about me. The following Sunday, Clara and Declan attended the community church service together. It was a subtle statement, but an important one in the social fabric of Tombstone. They sat with John Clum and his wife, and several other respectable families made a point of greeting Clara warmly. Gerald was there too, watching from the back of the church with calculating eyes. After the service, several women approached Clara. She had been friendly with them in passing, but had kept her distance, focused on work and her own independence. Now they invited her to a quilting circle, to afternoon tea, drawing her into the social network that would protect her reputation. "We heard what your former fiancé has been saying," Mrs. Clum said quietly. "Some of us know what it is like to escape situations that were not good for us. You are one of us now, Clara. We look after our own." Clara felt tears prick her eyes. She had been so focused on independence that she had forgotten the power of community. That evening, she and Declan sat on the porch watching the stars emerge. "You are building something real here," Declan said. "Not just a job or a place to live, a whole life." "We are building something," Clara corrected. "Together." He took her hand. "Together. I like the sound of that." But Gerald was not finished. Unable to damage Clara's reputation enough to force her return, he changed tactics. He approached Declan one afternoon while Declan was in town buying supplies. "You are Murphy, I understand," Gerald said, stepping into Declan's path outside the general store. "The man Clara is living with?" Declan kept his expression neutral. "She is renting a room at my ranch, properly and respectably." "Of course," Gerald said with a thin smile. "I have been making inquiries about you, Mr. Murphy. Interesting history you have. Orphaned, raised on the streets, worked as an enforcer for some rather unsavory characters in your youth." Declan went very still. "That was a long time ago." "But still true. Do you think Clara knows the kind of man you really are? The things you have done?" Gerald's voice was smooth as silk. "I wonder what she would think if she knew you have killed men, if she knew about that incident in Silver City 3 years ago." "I was hired to protect a mine owner from claim jumpers," Declan said evenly. "I did my job. It was investigated and ruled self-defense." "Still, violence follows you, does it not?" Gerald stepped closer. "Here is my proposal. You convince Clara to return to Philadelphia with me, and I will make sure your past stays buried. I have the resources to cause considerable trouble for you, Murphy. I can have lawyers investigate every aspect of your life. I can make sure you lose this ranch, or you can walk away from her, and I will leave you in peace." Declan looked at Gerald for a long moment, and something in his expression made the other man step back. "You do not know Clara very well, do you?" Declan said quietly. "If you did, you would know that threats will not work. And you certainly do not know me. I have survived things that would break you. I have built a life from nothing. And I have found a woman who sees me, all of me, including the broken parts, and cares anyway. So take your threats and your money and go back to Philadelphia because you have already lost." Gerald's face flushed with anger. "You will regret this." "The only thing I regret is that Clara wasted any time on you." Declan walked away, his hands shaking slightly but his head high. He knew Gerald meant his threats, knew the man had the resources to cause trouble, but he also knew he was done letting fear control his life. He went straight to the newspaper office and told Clara everything, about his past, about Gerald's threats, about the things he had done to survive in a harsh world. He laid it all out, holding nothing back, and waited for her judgment. Clara listened quietly, her face unreadable. When he finished, she stood and walked to the window, looking out at the dusty street. "Do you regret the things you did?" she asked finally. "Some of them. I did what I had to do to survive. But survival does not make everything right. I have spent years trying to be a better man than I was." "And are you better?" "I am trying to be." She turned to face him. "Gerald told you things about your past thinking it would drive us apart. He does not understand that I do not need a perfect man, Declan. I need an honest one. someone who has faced his shadows and keeps trying to walk toward the light anyway. Declan felt something break open in his chest. You are not afraid of what I was? I am in awe of what you have become. She crossed the room and took his hands. You survived. You built a life. You have been kind and honorable to me every single day. That is what matters. Clara, Gerald threatened you because he knows he is losing. Let him try to dig up the past. We will face it together. And they did. Gerald did hire a lawyer. He did try to investigate Declan's history and raise questions about the ranch. But Clara stood firm, and so did their friends. John Clum published a scathing editorial about men who tried to control women under the guise of protection. The church community rallied around them. Even the sheriff, who had known Declan for years, vouched for his character. Gerald's money could not buy the kind of loyalty built through genuine relationships. Finally, in late September, Gerald gave up. Clara received a letter from his lawyer stating that he was releasing all claim to their engagement and washing his hands of her irresponsible choices. Good riddance, Clara said, tossing the letter into the fireplace. That evening, Declan took her hand and led her out to the porch. The desert was cooling into autumn, the evening air crisp and clean. I have been thinking, he said, about good bones. Clara smiled. Oh? This ranch, it has good bones. But it has been a lonely place, just a place I worked, not a place I lived. You changed that. You made it a home. He took a breath. I love you, Clara. I want to build a real life with you. I want to marry you if you will have me. I know I do not have much. Stop. Clara put her fingers on his lips. You have everything that matters. You have honor and courage and a good heart. You have dreams and determination. And you have me, if you want me. I want you, he said fiercely. I will want you every day for the rest of my life. Then yes, I will marry you. He kissed her then, deep and sweet, and Clara felt the last pieces of her broken heart knit back together. They were married in October when the desert bloomed with unexpected wildflowers after autumn rains. The ceremony was held at the small church, with John Clum giving Clara away and half of Tombstone in attendance. Clara wore a simple cream-colored dress she had made herself, with lace her grandmother had tatted years ago. Declan wore his best suit, brushed clean and pressed with care. When they said their vows, Clara's voice was strong and clear. I promise to see the good in you, even when you cannot see it yourself. I promise to build a life with you, stone by stone, day by day. Declan's voice was rough with emotion. I promise to give you freedom even as I give you my heart. I promise to build a home with you that has good bones and strong walls and is full of love. The reception was held at the ranch with neighbors bringing food and drink. Someone produced a fiddle, and there was dancing under the stars. Clara danced with her new husband, her head on his shoulder, and thought about how far she had come from Philadelphia, how much she had gained by losing everything. That night in the house they now truly shared, Declan carried Clara over the threshold with ceremony and tenderness. Welcome home, Mrs. Murphy, he said. I've been home for months, Clara replied, kissing him. I just did not know it until I met you. Their first months of marriage were not easy, but they were good. The ranch demanded constant work, and money was tight. But they labored together, and somehow that made the burden lighter. Clara continued her work at the epitaph, and Declan built the ranch slowly toward profitability. They added chickens for eggs and selling, and Clara started a small garden. Declan hired a ranch hand, a young man named Sam who was honest and hardworking. With the extra help, Declan could focus on breeding better cattle. In the evenings, they sat together and made plans. They would add a room to the house for children when they came. They would buy more land, dig a deeper well, plant trees for shade. We are building something that will last, Declan said one evening, his arm around Clara as they watched the sunset. Good bones, Clara said, and he laughed. The best bones. Winter came, mild by Eastern standards, but cold enough for frost. Clara taught Declan to read better. He had learned as a child but had not had much practice, and they spent evenings by the fire with her reading aloud from books she had brought from Philadelphia and borrowed from neighbors. In January, Clara realized she was pregnant. She told Declan on a Sunday morning over breakfast. He stared at her for a long moment, then pulled her into his arms with such tenderness she cried. "A baby," he whispered into her hair. "We are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" Clara asked, though she could feel his joy trembling through him. "I did not know I could be this happy," he said honestly. "I did not know life could be this good." The pregnancy was not easy. Clara suffered from sickness that lasted well beyond the first months, and the summer heat made her uncomfortable. But she continued working at the epitaph as long as she could, and Declan hovered over her with anxious devotion. Mrs. Clum and the other ranch wives took Clara under their wing, sharing advice and hand-me-down baby clothes. The community that had defended her against Gerald now embraced her fully as one of their own. In September of 1883, Clara went into labor on a blazing hot afternoon. Declan rode for the midwife in a panic while Mrs. Clum, who had been visiting, stayed with Clara. The labor was long and difficult. Declan paced outside the bedroom, feeling helpless and terrified. He had faced down armed men without flinching, but the sounds of Clara's pain nearly brought him to his knees. Finally, near dawn, he heard a new sound. The thin, angry wail of a baby. The midwife appeared, smiling. "You have a son, Mr. Murphy, and your wife is asking for you." Declan entered the bedroom on shaking legs. Clara lay propped up on pillows, exhausted and radiant, holding a tiny bundle. "Meet your son," she said softly. Declan took the baby with careful hands, staring down at the small red face. The baby had dark hair and was waving tiny fists in outrage at being born. "He is perfect," Declan whispered. "You are perfect, thank you." "Thank you," Clara said, "for giving me a home, a real home." They named him James, after Clara's father, with the middle name Declan. Jamie, they called him, and he was demanding and loud and wonderful. Parenthood transformed them both. Declan discovered a patience he had not known he possessed, walking Jamie for hours when he was colicky, singing Irish lullabies his mother had taught him. Clara found strength she had not known she had, managing the baby and the household, and still contributing articles to the epitaph when time allowed. The ranch prospered. Declan's careful breeding program paid off, and his cattle brought good prices. They paid down debts and began to save. On Jamie's first birthday, they added the new room to the house, expanding their home as their family had expanded. 2 years later, Clara gave birth to a daughter they named Rose, for Clara's mother. Rose was easier than Jamie had been, a placid baby who smiled early and slept through the night. Jamie adored his little sister with fierce, protective love. Life settled into a rhythm of work and family, hardship and joy. There were bad years when drought threatened the cattle, and good years when everything seemed to bloom. There were moments of fear, when Jamie broke his arm falling from a horse, when Declan was thrown during branding and had to be carried home, and moments of perfect happiness. Through it all, Clara and Declan built their life stone by stone, as they had promised. In 1887, Clara published her first article under her own name in the Epitaph, an essay about the role of women in building the West. It created some controversy, but also drew praise. John Clum encouraged her to write more, and slowly she developed a reputation as a thoughtful commentator on social issues. Declan was fiercely proud of her, showing the articles to anyone who would look. "That is my wife," he would say, wonder still evident in his voice even after years of marriage. "She has always seen what others miss." In 1889, they received a letter from Clara's aunt in Philadelphia. The aunt was elderly and ill and wanted to see Clara before she died. After much discussion, Clara decided to make the trip, bringing the children to meet their great aunt. Declan could not leave the ranch, so Clara made the journey with the children and Mrs. Clum, who had family in the East. It was Clara's first time back since she had left 7 years before. Philadelphia seemed both familiar and alien. The streets were crowded and dirty, the air thick with smoke. Clara had forgotten how closed in everything felt, how little sky was visible between the buildings. Her aunt was overjoyed to meet the children, and they spent 2 weeks visiting. The old woman held Jamie and Rose and told Clara she was proud of her. "You were brave to leave," her aunt said, "braver than I ever was. You built the life you wanted instead of accepting the one you were given." Clara also visited her father's grave and made peace with the past. She saw Gerald once, from a distance, looking older and unhappy. She felt nothing for him, not even anger anymore. When it was time to leave, Clara felt only relief. Philadelphia was not her home anymore. Home was a ranch in Arizona territory with a husband who loved her and children who were growing strong and free under the wide desert sky. She arrived back in Tombstone on a golden October afternoon. Declan was waiting at the station, and when he saw her step down from the train with the children, his whole face lit up. "Welcome home," he said, gathering them all into his arms. "It is good to be home," Clara replied, and meant it with her whole heart. The children grew. Jamie became a skilled horseman and rancher, learning the business from his father. Rose proved to have her mother's love of words and her father's stubborn determination, a combination that made her formidable. In 1891, Clara gave birth to another son, Michael, and then in 1894, a surprise daughter they named Grace. The house expanded again, room by room as the family grew. Tombstone changed too. The silver mines began to play out, and the town's wild days faded. Some people left, seeking new booms elsewhere, but the Murphys stayed, rooted in the land they had claimed. Declan became a respected figure in the community, serving on the town council and helping to mediate disputes. Clara's writing gained a wider audience, and she began to contribute to newspapers across the territory. They faced sorrows as well as joys. Declan's old friend Sam, who had worked on the ranch for years, was killed in an accident in 1893. Clara had a miscarriage between Michael and Grace. There were droughts and diseases, setbacks and disappointments, but through it all, they had each other. On their 10th anniversary in October of 1893, they stood together on the porch of their expanded house and looked out at the ranch. "Do you remember what you said the first time you saw this place, War?" Declan asked. "I said it had good bones," Clara replied, leaning into his side. "You saw something in it that no one else did. You saw potential where everyone else saw failure?" "I saw what it could be," Clara said, "just like I saw what we could be." "And what is that?" She turned to face him, framing his weathered face with her hands. "Happy. Whole. Home." "We built this," Declan said, gesturing to the ranch, the house, the life they had created. "Together." "Together," Clara agreed, "and we are not done yet." They were not. The years continued to unfold, bringing new challenges and new blessings. Arizona became a state in 1912, and both Clara and Declan lived to see the transformation of the wild territory into something more settled, though it never quite lost its frontier spirit. Their children grew and had children of their own. Jamie took over the ranch, running it with his wife Sarah, a school teacher from Tucson. Rose moved to Phoenix and became a journalist, following in her mother's footsteps. Michael became a lawyer, fighting for water rights for small ranchers. Grace married a doctor and lived in Tombstone, raising her children within visiting distance of the ranch. Clara and Declan grew old together, their hair going gray, their hands becoming gnarled with arthritis. But they still walked the ranch together in the evenings, still sat on the porch and watched the sunsets, still held hands like young lovers. In 1925, Clara published a memoir about her years in the West. It became a regional bestseller, and she was invited to speak at universities and women's groups. She always told the same story, about coming west with nothing but determination, about finding a broken-down ranch and a lonely cowboy, about seeing good bones beneath the wear and building something that lasted. The secret, she would say, is not finding something perfect, It is finding something worth fighting for and then doing the work. Declan was always in the audience at these talks, beaming with pride. In 1927, on a warm spring evening, Clara and Declan celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary. Their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch, which had grown into a prosperous operation under Jamie's management. There was food and music and dancing, just like there had been at their wedding. Clara wore her wedding lace, now yellowed with age, but still beautiful. Declan wore a suit that fit his stooped frame loosely, but still made him look distinguished. They danced together slowly, carefully, while their family watched with tears of joy. 50 years, Clara said softly. Can you believe it? Every day with you has been a gift, Declan replied. Even the hard days, especially the hard days because we faced them together. Do you ever regret it? Taking a chance on a strange woman who showed up needing a place to stay? Declan laughed, the sound raspy but genuine. You are the best decision I ever made. You saw good bones in a broken-down ranch and a broken-down cowboy, and you loved us both back to life. We loved each other back to life, Clara corrected. That is how it works. That night, after the party ended and the family had gone home, Clara and Declan sat on their porch one last time. The stars were brilliant overhead, the desert air cool and clean. I have had a good life, Clara said quietly, better than I ever imagined. The best life, Declan agreed, and it started the day you walked into that general store and asked about a room. You were so suspicious, Clara teased. I was terrified, Declan admitted. I knew the moment I saw you that you could break my heart. And then you did. In the best possible way, you broke it open so love could get in. They sat in comfortable silence, hands intertwined. Two people who had built something beautiful from broken pieces. Clara died in the fall of 1928, peacefully in her sleep. She was 72 years old. Declan held her hand as she slipped away, telling her about the ranch, about their children, about all the good bones they had found together. He followed her 6 months later, his heart simply giving out one morning as he walked the land they had built together. Jamie found him near the old oak tree they had planted on their first anniversary, a smile on his weathered face. They were buried together in the Tombstone cemetery under a simple stone that read, Clara and Declan Murphy. They built a life with good bones. The ranch stayed in the family for generations, and the house they had built and expanded still stood solid and strong. Their descendants told stories about the woman who had come west for freedom and the cowboy who had learned to hope again, about how they had seen past surfaces to the strength beneath, about how they had built something that lasted. Because that is what love does. When it is real and deep and true, it sees good bones in broken things. It builds homes from ruins. It takes two wounded hearts and makes them whole. And it lasts. Through decades and distance, through hardship and joy, through all the turning seasons of a life well lived, it lasts because it is built on solid foundations, honesty and respect, laughter and tears, work and rest, passion and peace. Clara and Declan had built their life the way they built their ranch, with patience, determination, and faith in each other. They had started with almost nothing and created everything that mattered. Their children inherited more than land and cattle. They inherited the knowledge that broken things can be mended, that hope is worth holding on to, that love is something you build day by day with your own hands. On quiet evenings when the wind blew across the Arizona desert and the stars came out one by one, you could almost hear them still. The cowboy and the woman from Philadelphia, talking and laughing on their porch, planning their future, grateful for their present. Two souls who had found each other in the vast wilderness and decided to build a home. The Lucky Star Ranch prospered through the years, through depression and war, through drought and plenty. The children who grew up there learned to ride and work hard, to see potential in unexpected places, to believe in the power of good bones. They learned that home is not just a place but a choice you make every day. They learned that love is not about finding someone perfect, but about seeing someone clearly and choosing them anyway. They learned that the best things in life are built slowly, carefully, with attention and care. And they learned to look at broken down places and broken down people and ask not what they are, but what they could be, to see past the surface to the strength beneath, to recognize good bones when they see them. That was Clara and Declan's legacy, worth more than all the land and money they left behind. It was a legacy of faith in the future, of courage to begin again, of the transformative power of seeing and being seen. Decades after they died, a great-granddaughter named Lily stood on the same porch where Clara and Declan had spent so many evenings. She was engaged to be married, nervous about the commitment, wondering if she was making the right choice. Her grandmother Rose, now elderly herself, came to stand beside her. "Tell me again about Clara and Declan," Lily said, "and about how they met." Rose smiled and repeated the family story, about the woman who came west for freedom and the cowboy with a failing ranch, about how she had needed a place to stay and he had needed someone to see him, about the moment that changed everything. "Your great-grandmother looked at this place, which was practically falling down, and said it had good bones," Rose finished. "And your great-grandfather said she was the only one who had ever seen that, who had ever looked past the surface to what lay beneath." "How did they know it would work?" Lily asked us. "How did they know they would not fail?" "They did not," Rose said simply. "But they tried anyway. They built their life piece by piece, day by day. They faced their fears and their pasts. They worked hard and loved harder, and they created something beautiful." Lily looked out at the ranch, still thriving, still strong. "Good bones," she said softly. "The best bones," Rose agreed. "But bones alone are not enough. You have to add the flesh and muscle, the work and care. You have to show up every day and build. That is what Clara and Declan did. That is what you can do too if you are brave enough." Lily thought about her fiancé, about the life they wanted to build together. It would not be easy. Nothing worthwhile ever was. But maybe that was the point. Maybe the building was what mattered. The daily choice to see the good, to do the work, to believe in the bones. "I think I understand," she said. Rose put her arm around her great-granddaughter. "Then you have learned the most important lesson they had to teach. Look for the good bones. Build on them. Never stop building." The sun was setting over the Arizona desert, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, just as it had on the evening Clara had first told Declan his ranch had good bones, just as it had on countless evenings since, watching over generations of a family built on love and faith and the courage to begin again. The wind whispered through the cottonwood trees, carrying stories of a woman and a cowboy who had changed each other's lives, who had taken broken pieces and made them whole, who had built a home that stood strong long after they were gone. Good bones indeed. The very best bones. And a love that had lasted through the ages, built to stand for generations to come. The end of their story, but also the beginning. Because that is what real love does. It does not end when the lovers die. It echoes forward, teaching and inspiring, showing others what is possible when two brave hearts decide to build something together. Clara and Declan would have been pleased to know their great-granddaughter stood on their porch, learning their lessons, preparing to build her own life on the foundation they had laid. They would have been proud to see the ranch still thriving, the family still strong, the love still multiplying through the generations. They had come to the desert with nothing but hope and determination. They had found each other against all odds. They had built a home, raised a family, created a legacy. And they had done it all by seeing past surfaces to the strength beneath, by recognizing good bones when they saw them, by believing that broken things could be made whole. That was the true story of the cowboy and the woman from Philadelphia. Not a fairy tale with a magic ending, but something better, a real story about real people who chose each other and chose to build day after day, year after year, until their separate lives became one beautiful whole. And somewhere, in the space between memory and hope, In the desert wind and the brilliant stars, Clara and Declan were still there, still sitting on their porch, hands intertwined, hearts full, watching over the good bones they had built and the love that would never end. Home, family, love, built to last forever